Hello, my name is Raewynne Whiteley and I serve on the staff of the Diocese. It's a pleasure to be here with you this year for Holy Week and Easter, even if it does have to be from a distance. I hope that at some time in the future I'll be able to visit you in real life. It was evening during a time that should have been one of the great celebrations of the religious year. Passover, when the faithful came to Jerusalem from throughout the land and even beyond, following in the footsteps of their grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents before them, drawn together by the command spoken by God in the time of Moses. This day shall be a day of remembrance for you. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall observe it as a perpetual ordinance. It was a day when they remembered all that God had done for them, how God had rescued them from Egypt when death was all around, and brought them to safety in the promised land. And all the more they remembered it now, under occupation, a shout of defiance against the Roman soldiers who marched down the cobbled streets of the holy city. A time when people of faith, young and old, rich and poor, united in prayer and celebration. Except they weren't united. Plotting and treachery was how the week had begun. Jesus and his friends, like so many others, had travelled some distance and had stopped just outside the city for a meal at the home of Mary and Lazarus and Martha. Lazarus, whom he raised from the dead. And there, where life had triumphed so decisively, there was death. Mary pouring funeral oil on his feet and wiping them with her hair. Judas complaining about money and thinking to himself of treachery. All around, the scent of death. And in the background, the chief priests planning to kill not only Jesus, but Lazarus as well, removing the evidence of the God-breathed life. And the crowds cheered as he came into the city and clamoured to see him, and many believed, and many feared. And so it was, just as darkness was falling, the room warm with the scent of unleavened bread and heavy with foreboding, that Jesus knelt and washed his disciples' feet. No funeral oil this time, no hair to wipe them, this time water and a rough cloth. This was washing, and not for death, but for life, a new kind of life that would be characterized by love. Because that was what he said. Do what I have done to you. Wash one another's feet. Peter the impetuous, he was quick to say no. His master and Lord shouldn't do anything so menial as to wash his feet. And then, of course, when he finally understood what Jesus was doing, equally quick to ask Jesus to wash his whole body. But Peter was unusually silent when Jesus asked him to do the same, to wash the feet of his friends, to kneel down in front of them, to take their feet in his hands, heels cracked from walking on dry roads, gunk between their toes, to take their feet and rub the dirt away, knowing that as soon as they stepped outside again, it would all be for nothing. Do what I have done for you. Wash one another's feet. And then I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And they knew what he meant. This love wasn't just feeling nice. It was the same love that had them washing feet. Ordinary, everyday, costly. This time for us too, this is one of the great celebrations of the religious year. One when we had expected to follow in the footsteps of our grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents before them, drawn together to remember what God has done for us in the life and the death and the resurrection of our Saviour. This evening we would have gathered like the disciples. Our feet too would have been washed. We too would have shared bread and wine. And we too would have heard those words, love one another. But perhaps it is now, when we can't be together, that the words take on a fuller meaning. Because there's a risk, isn't there, that when we hear these words within the nice, safe, predictable confines of a Maundy Thursday service, that the kind of love that we can imagine ourselves doing is that which is equally nice and safe and predictable. But Jesus' love wasn't nice or safe or predictable. It was his love that led him to walk out of that room that first Maundy Thursday, back into a world of plotting and treachery, a world where he would be greeted by a kiss of betrayal and a cross of death. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. It reminds me of those words attributed to St. Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on the world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet. Yours are the eyes, yours are the body. Christ has no body on earth but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. Death hangs heavy over us, just as it did then. Day by day the numbers go up, and as the days pass, the chances increase that among those numbers will be someone that we know. We've all been asked to stay home in order to keep others safe, which in itself is an act of love. But it's tempting, isn't it, at a time like this to withdraw from life, to put everything on hold and just wait until what we think of as normal life returns. But this is life too. When we look back, there won't simply be a void, a gap as if we'd turned off the video camera. We will remember what happened in this time, and so will others. This is a time to love. That love, of course, must be at a distance. Jesus is not calling us to be foolhardy. But this is a time to reach out to others, especially those whom we know who are isolated and afraid. To ring them, to write letters, to connect online, to greet people as we pass them in the street, to give generously. One person I know started a book exchange on her front step. Another, a simple food pantry. Take what you need, give what you can. You might offer to shop for others, to make a meal and drop it by, to check in on a neighbour, to knit or sew something to give away, to donate to charities in need, to use your time, something that is for most of us so precious. Use your time for the sake of others. This is love. This is Christ's love.